Okay, so this is actually a couple days after I've watched the movie. I did a review beforehand, but I didn't really like the way it came out. And I wanted to redo it because, I've had more time to think about the movie, but also I think I could give a better review this time around. So I'll try my best to do a spoiler-free review for the first half of this, and then I will give a spoiler warning once I'm getting into some really significant stuff. So this movie was fun. There's no other way I could really articulate it better. It was a fun movie. Now, Shin Godzilla is a much better written movie, I would say. This one is more fun, though. There's inconsistencies, not just with certain things in the plot, but certain rules that are established within the movie, which, I felt were, and I'll get into the details, what I mean by that when I get into the spoilers, but there was some kind of inconsistencies. The characters were a little bit more likable in this one than they were in the previous one. The first one felt like the characters were just kind of just dry and just completely uninspired and uninteresting, and I didn't really find myself not only not relating to any of them, but not really caring about any of them and what was going on with them. The only one that I cared about in that first one, and I've said this before, I won't get too deeply into this, was Bryan Cranston. He seemed to be the most interesting character, but as you know, he dies pretty much early on in the movie, and it just kind of leaves you like, okay, now you're left with all these people that you could care less about. In this one, I think they did a little bit of a better job to get you behind some of the characters, or at least have them get your attention, I guess would be a better way to put it, than the first one did. They were a little bit more animated. They were a little bit more, they seem to have a little bit more personality, and I guess the best way for me to put it is, I guess they were a little bit more colorful, if that makes sense. But that's one of the things that I will say I liked a little bit more, but at the end of the day, I still didn't really care about these characters all that much. The main character of this movie, I forget his name, I forget the actor's name, but he's done a lot of TV. He's usually a lead character in TV shows. He was the lead in the show Friday Night Lights, as well as some other show that I think he's currently doing on Netflix or on Hulu or one of those streaming services. I'm sure somebody will put his name in the comment section below because it's escaping me right now. But the first show I ever saw him in was Early Edition, the show called Early Edition. And I like him as an actor. And he was all right in this movie, but at times he was a little bit annoying as a lead actor. And again, I'll get into details with that once I get to the spoilers. I felt there was also things within the plot that were a little bit too convenient at times. Instead of like really trying to flesh out and tell a good story, I felt they did certain things just to be a little bit convenient. But that's neither here nor there. For the most part, overall, I did enjoy the movie. I liked it. I would say in terms of the MonsterVerse movies, I may like it just slightly better than Kong Skull Island. And I really liked Kong Skull Island. So I don't think this movie is I still don't feel like, oh, it's the be-all and end-all of American Godzilla movies, but it is, I would say for sure, at this point, it is the best one that's been made so far, in my opinion. And it's definitely a fun, it's a good old fun popcorn flick, I guess is the best way I could put it. So I thought that the computer graphics, the special effects were well done. I thought the movie was well paced. I never felt like the movie dragged like the first one did, at least not that I can recall. There was points in time where, of course, there's talking and stuff like that, but it never felt like it was dragging too much like the first one was, where the first one was it just felt like just very long, very boring. And the other thing that I will say about this movie is you get a lot more monsters, of course, than you do in 2014. From the very beginning, you get some monster action. I think within the first 10 minutes, you see your first monster in this movie. So I thought that was great. And that's not me spoiling anything. You guys will see for yourself. Won't say who it is. You guys will see for yourself if you're going to watch the movie. But one thing I will say, and again, and I don't think this is spoiling it, this is just my opinion, you do get a significant amount of monster action in this movie, way more than the first one. And for a lot of you, I'm sure that you got enough. And it's not me trying to be too picky or too complaining and stuff. I just felt that the way that the monsters, what surprised me was that for the amount of monsters that were in this movie, I felt that they weren't utilized to their full potential. if that makes sense. And I think you'll understand what I mean when you actually watch the movie. I was very surprised. I thought that with the amount of monsters that they had, that there was no way they could underutilize the monsters as much in this one. And I felt that they didn't really use them to their full potential. That's just my opinion. Like I said, I still enjoyed the movie. I still thought it was great. I just think that they could have used some of the, the monsters that they sold this movie on. I think they could have used them a little bit, just a little bit more. Now, there is some monsters that are excluded for that. And again, I'll get into that when I get into the spoilers. But that's pretty much it. For those of you wondering what I thought of the movie, I liked it. It is, I think, the best MonsterVerse movie so far. And I think it's a step in the right direction of where they need to go, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the next one. So that is my thoughts on Godzilla King of the Monsters, spoiler free. Now, if you want me to get into spoilers, here we go. I'm going to get into spoilers right now, but I'll give you guys the opportunity to click off this video if you haven't seen it yet and you don't want it to be spoiled. So 3, 2, 1. Okay, so the movie starts off Millie Bobby Brown, and her mother in this is Vera Farmiga, I believe is the actress's name. It's funny, I can remember their names. I can't remember the guy from Early Edition though. But basically, the guy from Early Edition, Vera Farmiga, and Millie Bobby Brown, they're a family, of course. Vera Farmiga and the husband, I'll just call him the husband for now, the guy from Early Edition, the main guy in this, the husband, they're separated. As a result of Godzilla's first attack in Godzilla 2014, their oldest son was killed during that attack. So that kind of was the catalyst for kind of this divide between Vera Farmiga and her husband, caused issues for them. The husband ended up drinking heavily, I guess, and they ended up splitting. And Vera Farmiga stays with the daughter, who is Millie Bobby Brown. They move somewhere, and Vera Farmiga works for Monarch. She creates this system, this alpha wave system that's like this kind of based on the orca whales calls to communicate. It's a program, this amplification program that she builds, or this orca wave amplifier wave, whatever, in order to contact the Titans. That's what they call the monsters in this. They call them the Titans. And she develops this program, which I felt was a little bit convenient because we're talking about these characters, these monsters that are thousands upon thousands of years old, and that, you're somehow able to find a way to communicate with them through just using what you've learned with whales. I just felt it to be a little bit too convenient. I didn't care for that all that much. But what ends up happening is that she ends up getting kidnapped along with Millie Bobby Brown by this terrorist organization, this, the extreme environmentalist organization that believes that the world needs to be kind of set in balance. That the monsters, all the monsters that are out there, they need to be awakened, and they need to bring balance back to the earth because of the evil that mankind has done to the world. They need to bring these monsters back in order to bring balance back to the world. So they kidnap her just to get her little device that can essentially, control the monsters or awaken them or whatever. And what ends up happening is that they go and get the husband, because he knows about the device as well, because he worked on it with Vera Farmiga. And his character in this is, he's a bit of a know-it-all. The guy is pretty annoying in this. He basically, at times, I like this actor. I like him and stuff, but in this movie, he was completely ridiculous. He apparently knew everything and could do everything. Every time he went into a room, he was telling people what to do, and he seemed to know better than everybody, even the military leaders. Which I found to be a little bit of a nuisance. I was just like, okay, what's the point of there being a general or this major over here if this guy knows everything? He knows how to find Godzilla. He knows how to do this. He knows how to do that. And it's a little bit ridiculous, and it got really obnoxious at times. But it is what it is. Ken Watanabe's character returns in this as Dr. Serizawa. He looked less confused in this movie, but he was a little bit more likable. But there's a point in time where we get to in the movie with him where he decides he's going to go ahead and be the martyr and sacrifice himself. I'll get to that in just a little bit, but as the movie progresses, we find out that Vera Farmiga isn't just kidnapped for this device. She kind of plotted this along with the terrorist guy, and she's with them. She's a bad guy. She's one of the ones that helped set this up, and poor Millie Bobby Brown did not know all this, so she's kind of like along for the ride in this. She's kind of caught between her two parents, kind of manipulated by her mom. Her mom is kind of a misguided villain, I guess you could say. You know, she wants to do what's best for the world, but she's going about it in an extreme manner by trying to unleash all the monsters of the world, you know, out so that, you know, they can destroy and bring balance back to the world, whatever. But what ends up happening is when King Ghidorah gets awakened, King Ghidorah quickly and pretty decisively whips up on Godzilla to the point that he's incapacitated. So, and a lot of that also happens because of some of the Easter eggs that they put in this movie. That's one thing I will tell you guys right now. A lot of Easter eggs in this movie, which I didn't mind. But there was some that I felt, there was one that I felt that they really trivialized, and that's the Oxygen Destroyer. For those of you that remember the first Godzilla movie, 1954, that's how he's defeated, excuse me, in the first movie. I'm gonna have to take a drink of water. He's defeated by the Oxygen Destroyer that Dr. Serizawa creates in the first movie. And it's a weapon of mass destruction. It's the only thing that can really defeat Godzilla. But halfway through the movie, they decide to drop this on Godzilla while he's fighting with King Ghidorah in the hopes that it will wipe out both of them. And of course, you know, because it's happening halfway through the movie, that they're both going to be fine, you know. So it kind of, it was kind of dumb. I didn't like that because I felt that the Oxygen Destroyer is something that you could use for another movie. That, let's say there's another movie down the line where Godzilla has to work with humanity in order to defeat a monster, and they could have come up with the Oxygen Destroyer for that. But now it's like a whatever weapon. Now we know that it doesn't really work. It's not going to kill Godzilla. It's not going to kill anything that fights Godzilla. So now it's just kind of a throwaway thing. So I didn't care for that. But yeah, Godzilla's down for the count. Serizawa and company, they're just like, they find him, they find out where Godzilla's lair is, so to speak, and he's recovering. He's trying to absorb radiation, but they don't have time for him to absorb radiation that might take years for him to absorb. So they come up with this idea, hey, let's drop a nuke on him and let's supercharge him. But conveniently enough, their weapons don't work, so they can't fire the nuke at him. So somebody has to manually go and take a nuclear warhead to him and detonate him. And of course, Dr. Serizawa decides to be the one to do it. And it's bad because they want to make you feel like, they want to make you feel bad for the fact that he's about to sacrifice his life doing this, but you don't really care. Because that's the problem with the characters in this movie. You don't care about them. You might care about them a little bit more than the ones in 2014, but ultimately you really don't care about them. I mean, they're a little bit more likable and they bring a little bit more attention to themselves than in the first movie. They have a little bit more personality than the characters in the first movie, but ultimately I didn't really care about any of them. And Dr. Serizawa, he goes ahead and decides he's going to martyr himself in order to supercharge Godzilla. And this is where I'll get to the point where I was saying the movie kind of doesn't follow its own rules, because I was under the impression that Godzilla was still emitting, or where Godzilla was at, there was so much radiation there that the way they were explaining it, like, well, hey, anybody who goes there, you know, all this stuff is going to happen with all the radiation exposure. Even if they were to get away, they won't survive all the radiation exposure. But the way the guy was describing that to Dr. Serizawa and how that was going to happen, I mean, you would have thought that once he got out and started heading towards where he needed to detonate the bomb, that he was going to start, like, his suit was going to start melting, or there was going to be, like, his skin was going to start burning or something. None of that happened. And there's even a point where he even touches Godzilla, and I would think, like, from the way the guy was making it sound, he was making it sound like he was going to be, like, vaporized just being close to Godzilla, but that didn't happen. So that's what I was talking about with some of the inconsistencies with the movie and the way they explain certain things. But that's neither here nor there. It's whatever. It's movies. They do it all the time. Well, not all, but, you know. that happened. He ends up dying, and in a kind of martyr-like fashion, he gets to touch Godzilla and make some kind of connection with him. But you don't care. I didn't really feel anything for it. I didn't feel sad for him. It was just whatever, because they didn't really do a good job. They kind of were trying to force you to feel something when there's not really anything there to feel. So Godzilla gets supercharged. He fights Ghidorah again, and Ghidorah whips him again. Which, that's something that I did like about the movie a lot. The fact that they made Ghidorah this menacing threat. They really drove home the point that this is Godzilla's be-all and end-all ultimate nemesis. He whips Godzilla again, even though Godzilla is supercharged. It isn't until Mothra kind of sacrifices herself and kind of superpowers him more that Godzilla is able to do this kind of atomic pulse thing. Oh, by the way, they made him look they made him look like burning Godzilla. Made him look like he was going to go nuclear. Another nice little Easter egg there. But he did this kind of like atomic pulse thing that he used to defeat Ghidorah, which I thought was interesting. That was an interesting new little power. But that's finally what it took for him to defeat Ghidorah in the end. And the thing is, with the other monsters in this movie, I really felt, like I said prior, I really felt they were underutilized, and by that I mean Ghidorah was fine. Ghidorah, they did a great job with Ghidorah. Mothra didn't really do anything. She kind of did her thing that she does in the Japanese movies where she ultimately sacrifices herself, which was fine. But Rodan, they made him kind of a biatch. I mean, Rodan can be a little bit of a clown in some of the older movies, and he kind of can be a little bit of a biatch in some of those movies. But I thought for his first outing, they could have done a little bit more with him. And I felt they could have done a little bit more with Mothra as well. But that's just, like I said, that's just small gripe. I still was very satisfied with what I saw in this movie and very happy with what I saw in this movie. And from the way they leave things, of course, they're laying the groundwork for Kong versus Godzilla. They pretty much reaffirmed that one more time at the end by you seeing like this cave painting of Kong jumping at Godzilla. And what I don't care for, though, is prior to you seeing even that, was after Godzilla defeats Ghidorah, all the monsters bow to him like he's the king, and they're literally in a circle around him. And you think, what are they going to do? They're going to try jumping him? They all start bowing. It starts off with Rodan, of course. He does the wing thing bow. And it's funny because me and Matt Briquette of Monstrosities were talking about it. It reminded us of Zazu from The Lion King, and that's exactly what it reminded me of. They were literally in a circle around him, and I'm just thinking, man, this is like Lion King, man. I'm waiting to hear the circle of life here while they're doing all this. And it was kind of cheesy. I didn't care for that. I thought that was kind of dumb. But I remember thinking to myself, I know who won't bow. Kong won't bow. He ain't going to bow. So prior to that, though, prior to Godzilla being defeated, I forgot to mention this, was Vera Farmiga's character. They do this whole thing with her redemptive arc. After all the bad that she's done, she decides to sacrifice her life in order to make sure that Godzilla can defeat Ghidorah. And it seemed kind of, I knew to expect that from what she had done, that she was either going to die or go to jail. More likely she was going to die. She was going to end up sacrificing herself. But it just kind of like, wow, she's going to sacrifice her life after all she's put her kid through, manipulating her kid into helping her or making her kid think that she was going to do something else when that's not really what she was going to do, and all these issues that poor Millie Bobby Brown's going to have on top of the fact that, she has to now watch her mom go and, sacrifice her life. I was like, okay, whatever. And then prior to that with Dr. Serizawa, it's funny how he went from the first movie, let them fight, to in this movie, let me die. And it's just like, they're just, these people seem to not think that there's really no other options outside of just the immediate one they go to. So it is what it is. It's how they're written. Like I said, just small gripes from me. But the post-credit scene of the movie leaves it open to something else that I had kind of theorized. They find Ghidorah's head. They have one of Ghidorah's heads, and the environmentalist guy, the terrorist guy, who apparently also deals with Titan DNA, which that's what they're called in this movie. They're called Titans. He decides to take Ghidorah's head. So one of two things are going to happen. Either they're going to go ahead and clone Ghidorah, or we could maybe see Mecha King Ghidorah or something. But I think that kind of leads towards what I was thinking, and maybe I'm completely wrong, but I had kind of theorized that Kong versus Godzilla will probably start off as a fighting movie, but will end up as a team-up movie. And I think with the way they portrayed Ghidorah in this movie, he's definitely a big enough threat that it would take Kong and Godzilla to team up, maybe to fight him a second time. Maybe they'll juice him up more second time around, that he'll be even more of a threat, because it really took just everything that Godzilla had, plus Mothra pretty much sacrificing herself like she always does and infusing Godzilla with power in order for him to defeat Ghidorah. So I think that's where it'll end up. I think it'll end up with a Ghidorah rematch, but this time it'll be Kong and Godzilla fighting Ghidorah. I think, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm completely wrong, maybe they'll bring Ghidorah back in another movie down the line. I don't know. That's just what I think for now. Let me know what you guys think. That's pretty much all the thoughts that I had about Godzilla King of the Monsters. Like I said, overall, I liked it. And where it stacks up, as far as MonsterVerse goes, probably is the one I like the most so far. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. If you guys have already seen the movie, what did you think of it? Is it the best one? Is there still more improvement that needs to happen? Because that's one thing I will say. I think they could still do better, but I am satisfied with this movie. So for those of you that came thinking, oh, you know, you're not a fan of this, that, or the other, I liked it, okay? I liked the movie, and I'm very much looking forward to Kong versus Godzilla. But let me know what you guys think, and until next time, you know how it goes. The hunt continues.